Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another special episode of Herschel Talkers. Please rate and subscribe on our YouTube channel. It'd help us out, get those YouTube views up. Got a great return guest today, Mr. Goodpaster from the Grueling Truth. How we doing today, Mike?
You already forgot my first name when you were
Mike
introducing me.
Goodpaster, there it is.
Just admit it. How you doing, Trey? Great to be on again.
How we do? How's everything with you, Mike? I know you do a little coaching. How's your season going?
Season's over. We were 6-1 until the COVID hit. We ended up 6-4. So it is what it is. I think everybody's going through that at every level.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you're safe. We'll jump right into it. Georgia last minute was postponed last week. I was supposed to play Vanderbilt. I kind of had a bad feeling they would kind of postpone. I know they got kind of a thrown together team, but it is what it is. And we move on this week, and we have on the road at Missouri. I hated that it's a 12 o'clock game, and then we got to travel all the way out there to Columbia, Missouri. So I'm a little nervous, but it did give them another week to prepare. I believe we got a good chance of getting Jordan Davis, our big defensive tackle, back, which will be great. Point spread's 13. And Mike, to get to I know you're more of a neutral, kind of outside the SEC box. What's been your thoughts on Georgia this year and possibly in the SEC?
Unfortunately, I think they're overranked with the teams they've played, but I think Texas A&M may be also. I think Alabama's the best team in the country. Yeah. I know most SEC people, if you're not an Alabama fan, you hate Alabama. Yeah. I don't like Alabama. I can't stand Nick Saban. But, I mean, it is what it is. I think they're the best team. I think they're heads and shoulders above everybody this year. Yeah. I think Georgia has probably done what the talent they have, should be doing. I mean, they can run the ball. The game against Missouri, I think, is going to be a hell of a game.
It is. I think Missouri's really trending. I think they won 5 out of 6. Their quarterback's playing really well. I think they're 4th in the SEC on defense and 4th in the SEC on offense. So I know we got JT Daniels, a lot of hype behind him. He had run a really good game in Mississippi State and kind of like a Jake Fromm-esque game against South Carolina where you really didn't need him. But if I was a betting man, I'd actually go with just going out there. It's going to be 11 a.m. kick. It's noon game. Kirby Smart, ironically, 3-3 on noon games, so they kind of struggle. I think Georgia wins, but they don't cover. I'm going to say 33-24.
What's the spread on the game? Was it like 12 or 13?
Yeah, it's actually 13 right here on ESPN. Yeah.
But if I had to bet it, I would take Missouri in the points, but I think Georgia will win the game also. I think they're a more complete football team.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just a little nervous because how motivated are they? You're not in the SEC, championship race. So that's my only thing.
Yeah, and I didn't bring up Florida. I think Florida is a team that, with Kyle Trask, could give Alabama a run for their money in the SEC championship game.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I kind of totally agree. To kind of counter what you were saying is I think Alabama's probably 2 or 3 scorers better than anyone. If I had to pick the team to hang around with them, maybe Clemson, just because I think they got the talent in Trevor Lawrence. But
Clemson, the thing that worries me about Clemson is the lack of being able to run the ball with Etienne, and they've got a young offensive line. I think Clemson, I know a lot of people think Clemson's just going to blow Notre Dame out in that ACC championship game, but I think that Notre Dame could possibly beat them again. I think Notre Dame's really good defensively. And when you look at it, they didn't have Trevor Lawrence last time, but the kid that was backing up Lawrence, I don't see how Lawrence could have done a hell of a lot more than what he did in that game.
Oh, yeah, completely agree. And we'll jump right into that transition to the college football playoffs because I know that's a hot topic. Let's see what we got here. So we got Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State. So I always like to play the what ifs. So Mike, let's say speaking of what you were just talking about, let's say Notre Dame beats Clemson, that would knock them out. Ohio State's sitting there at 5-0. Do you think Texas A&M would jump in that 4th spot, or who in your opinion gets the 4th spot if, let's say, Clemson lost?
I would say this. Tell me what the final score of Alabama-Florida is. I mean, I think if Alabama-Florida play and it's a 41-38 game, I think you could see Florida jump above Texas A&M.
Do you think it's maybe they got to beat them by 2 or 3 scores?
Yeah, I mean, to keep Florida – I mean, if Florida's close, especially if Trask wins the Heisman,
Yeah.
which I think he should right now. I don't see the thing that blows me away is the fact that you've got Iowa State sitting at number 7 right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a 2-loss team and no great wins, I don't think. I mean, they beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma's all right. I really believe Cincinnati should be in before Ohio State.
Yeah, they are. Cincinnati's been really good. Well, I haven't really followed them too well. What's their biggest win, you think, if you had to pick Cincinnati?
Well, the thing about them is overall, if you look at the win-loss record of the top 10 teams in the country, they've played the toughest schedule. And they will have beaten, if they beat Tulsa, who's a top 25 team in the ACC or the AAC championship game, they'll have 6 wins over teams with winning records. Ohio State will be 5-0. If they beat Northwestern, they'll be 6-0 against Indiana and Northwestern being their best competition.
Yeah.
So Central Florida is still a good football team. They beat Central Florida. And I believe they started the year off by beating Army, which is not as big a deal now, but Army was ranked in the top 25. SMU was ranked 14th when Cincinnati beat them by 30 points. SMU's a good football team. If they blow out Tulsa, they beat UCF, who's still a good team. I just think the totality of their schedule, I would put them in over Ohio State. I think they would beat Ohio State because Ohio State lost 3/4 of their defensive secondary last year. And I mean, let's face it, they gave up 28 or 29 points to Rutgers, 28 to Penn State. They gave up 35 to Indiana, and Indiana's their best win. I'm an Indiana fan. I'm from Indiana. Indiana's a good football team. They're ranked probably about where they should be. But the fact that in Columbus, 42-35, and the fact that now they're changing the rules in the Big Ten to get Ohio State into the Big Ten championship game's a joke, because why do you have the rule to begin with if you're just going to change it? And the question is, if it would have been on the other side, it would have been between Northwestern and Wisconsin, and Northwestern was 4-1 or 5-0, would they do the same thing for Northwestern, or would they let Wisconsin go ahead and play in the championship game?
Yeah, I agree. I know a lot of conspiracy theories are saying that Michigan give them the old,
No, I think this. If I'm Jim Harbaugh, I want to play that game because it's the only way he can save his ass right now, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of that, from what you've been reading or hearing, do you think he's done? Do you think one more year? Do you think he goes to NFL on Jim Harbaugh?
I think he's done and he goes to the NFL. I think this. I think Jim Harbaugh's a really good football coach. I think they have expectations at Michigan that are well beyond what they should be. I mean, let's face it, since 1950, Michigan's won 1 national championship. I mean, when you look at Jim Harbaugh, it's going to take a while to be able to do what Ohio State's done, because Ohio State, when's the last time they had a bad coach? I mean, the worst coach I remember is John Cooper. John Cooper wasn't terrible there, but winner 8 or 9 games get you fired at Ohio State. I mean, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, Ryan Day, they have a tradition there. Everything's been put in place, and I think that anybody could go to Michigan and right away turn this around and be able to beat Ohio State is crazy. And I thought firing Jim Harbaugh would be insane until about week 3 of this season, because that team looks so bad right now, it's hard to justify keeping him.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree with that. I was thinking, location-wise, if he takes that Detroit job, they're saying don't have to move. Give him a company
I think
car.
it would be perfect. And you got Matt Stafford there. I think the Detroit Lions, with a good football coach, are a 500 football team right now. Matt Patricia, of course, is not a good football coach, and it pretty much destroyed the Lions. But the Lions have a foundation there. In the NFC North, let's face it, the Vikings are a good football team. They've got explosive players in Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook. Kirk Cousins has played really well. The Packers have Aaron Rodgers. But the Bears, I mean, the Lions should be infinitely better than the Bears just with the talent they have there, and having Matthew Stafford instead of Mitchell Trubisky. So when you look at it, Detroit is probably one of the better job openings outside of maybe Houston, where you get Deshaun Watson.
Exactly. That is really good points. Transition, I guess, to more of the could the craziness happen? Let's say Notre Dame loses to Clemson with Trevor Lawrence within, I think they got to stay within maybe 10 to 14 points. Do you think they would go from maybe 2 to 4? Ohio State moves up Clemson, and that'd be you're saying for now just rearranged.
Yeah, I think this. I think every year the college football playoff system wants Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Ohio State in some order. That's your TV ratings. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory because it's just true. They're never letting a team like a Cincinnati or UCF in the past break into the top four because what people don't realize is, number one, the NCAA doesn't really control the college playoff system. The Big Five power conferences do. And if you let a Cincinnati in this year, you're taking away millions of dollars from those Power Five conferences. So I don't think it's ever going to happen. And I think the best chance for somebody to break in would be Florida if they come close to beating Alabama. But I still think if Alabama was to lose to 3 by Florida, they're not dropping Alabama out of the top 4. If Notre Dame loses a close game to Clemson, they're not dropping them out. So I think the only chance you have here is if Ohio State loses to Northwestern. I think then Texas A&M, Florida, Iowa State are in play. And the bad thing about that is if Florida, I don't see how it's not going to be those top 4 teams unless Northwestern beats Ohio State.
All right. And then how about that conspiracy theory? They probably wouldn't do it because it's a COVID year of making it an 18 playoff. Do you think that would make it interesting?
I would think if they were going to do that, they would have already done that. And it should have been done at the start. They should have seen this coming. I mean, right now we're sitting with a team ranked number 4 at 5-0. The best they can do is 6-0. I mean, when you look at Notre Dame, they don't play a bunch of powerhouse teams, but the more games you play, the better chance you sustain an injury to a quarterback. You just go play a team that plays out of their mind, like Clemson when they lost to Pitt a couple of years ago. Nobody expected that, but things like that happen. And what you've done here is you've eliminated 6 games, 5 to 6 games everybody else has to play where something can happen, and Ohio State didn't have to. I think it's completely unfair. And I can see why Ohio State fans would say we beat Indiana, but you beat Indiana by a touchdown. And we watched Coastal Carolina and BYU play maybe the game of the year last week on about 2 or 3 days' notice. Why couldn't Ohio State travel to Indiana this week?
Yeah, I agree.
Because Purdue is going to cancel the game against Indiana if they haven't already, because I got information a couple days ago that they're not going to have enough healthy players because of the COVID. They're probably going to have to cancel the game.
Right.
So why wouldn't you do that? Because the other thing it does is if Ohio State goes to Indiana and wins, then you got 2 wins over a top 15 team. You beat Northwestern, who may be top 20 at the time, and then people like me can't sit here and pick it apart so much.
Right.
But right now, when your best win is against Indiana by 7, and Indiana had the ball with a chance to tie at the end, I don't see how that makes them a top 4 team.
Yeah. So from what you're reading, I know they canceled Ohio State, Michigan this week. So definitely they would only play in the Big Ten championship. Is that the next game? They're not going to.
Yeah, because they're not going to play. They're not going to play anybody in short notice and risk anything. Yeah. Coastal Carolina and BYU are in this case where BYU and Coastal Carolina are trying to prove that they belong where they're at. So they'll take a risk. If you're Ohio State and you're sitting at number 4, why would you risk this?
Yeah.
And the other thing that gets me is Iowa State. With 2 losses, they bump them ahead of Cincinnati, and it was because Cincinnati canceled their game. If Cincinnati would have played Temple and beat them by 55 points, they would still sit at number 7. Why can't they jump Texas A&M or Florida over Ohio State? I haven't seen A&M play that much, but Florida and Kyle Trask would beat the hell out of Ohio State. And if you put Alabama against Ohio State, that's going to be an ass whipping.
Yeah, it is. And I guess it would be looking like, if Notre Dame loses to Clemson, it'd probably be Notre Dame, Alabama in that first seed. So
yeah, and I actually think that would be a competitive game this year. I think Notre Dame is much better than what they've been in the past few years. I think defensively they're good enough to actually put up a fight.
Who do you think, of course, Alabama's ahead of everyone. Who do you think maybe the best matchup would be to try to hang with them?
With Alabama?
Yeah.
I mean, even though Clemson's offensive line is not that good, they got Dabo Swinney. And there's been twice where he's upset Alabama. I would think Notre Dame has a shot. I think Florida has a shot because of Kyle Trask. Other than that, I don't really see a lot there. I think that, and this may sound crazy, and I know I got the hat on, doesn't mean anything. I'm not really a huge Bearcats fan. I think Cincinnati could give them trouble defensively. I think they could give them trouble offensively with Desmond Ridder as the quarterback. But in the end, Alabama's going to wear them out and beat them by 2 or 3 touchdowns at the end of the game anyways.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, I don't know. Why not give Coastal Carolina a shot? What the hell? Coastal Carolina has a better resume right now than Ohio State does.
Yeah, very good points. I just felt like they were. I heard earlier today they're just kind of rubber stamped this year, just because they're a Big Ten, Ohio State,
Yeah.
Justin Fields. They just plugging them in there, you know.
Yeah, they do that every year, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you start off every year with about the same 4 teams at the top.
Yeah. Well, you got me nervous now. I haven't really looked down too much. That the chances Georgia might play them in the Peach Bowl, and it's kind of, I feel like it's no win for Georgia. It's kind of like if you beat them, you're like, yeah, non-power 5, you're supposed to beat them. But if Cincinnati smoked us, not a good look for us. So
From watching Georgia, I think Cincinnati would win the game fairly easily. And that's not a shot at Georgia fans. I think Cincinnati last year was really good. I mean, their 2 losses were close games at Memphis. Memphis ended up ranked in the top 15.
Right.
So, and the thing about Cincinnati and Georgia, my biggest difference there is that coach. Luke Fickell's a better football coach.
Yeah. I think I can see, Kirby Smart probably a better recruiter, but I know he gets questioned a lot on his.
Well, this is the thing, though. Is he a better recruiter to recruit the 4th best team in the SEC, or is it Luke Fickell who has recruited Cincinnati from being a 500 program to 11-2 the last 2 years and undefeated this year? And Fickell, I think, is the first coach. Brian Kelly couldn't even do this. That has actually recruited or got already commitments from 3 or 4 or 5-star recruits for next year. And I think the last time, this was like a month ago, their recruiting class was ranked like number 9 in the country.
Wow, that is good.
So the question is, does Luke Fickell stay at Cincinnati, or does he parlay this to go to a bigger program? And I really think, from talking to him, I don't think he has any intention of going anywhere.
That's a great question. I know there's some big openings coming in. We'll transition. I always like to talk about it. So the coaching hot seat, any of these jobs you think might come available. And I know the one we'll talk about real quick because it happened. What you think about the Shane Beamer hire for South Carolina? I know South Carolina more of a second-tier program than the SEC, in my opinion. Shane Beamer is actually tight end and special teams coach for Georgia, I think, from 2013 to 2016. He's currently with Oklahoma Sooners. So
what's his resume? His daddy is Frank, right?
That's correct. But he's never been a head coach before, and this is, a Power 5 program, SEC.
Yeah. I mean, you're South Carolina. Are you just hiring the name Beamer?
I hear he knows, that South Carolina, South recruiting trail. He's got a lot of passion. Everybody says he's, a really intelligent guy. He's a younger guy, got a lot of fire. He said that was his dream job. I'm sure when they interviewed him, they talked to former players and all that type of thing.
It's his dream job until Virginia Tech opens up.
Yeah, that is a good point. And I think he did have his dad. He's going to be like a consultant with him, with the team. So I'm sure he might be there in his ear helping out.
Well, I don't know if that's good or bad or no. I mean, come on. Sometimes you just need to make your own name in life. And the problem you get, the NFL drives me nuts. You look at the NFL coaches that aren't qualified to be NFL coaches to get jobs because of who their dad was or the grandpa or who's friends with the owner. That's why we see so many failed NFL coaches. I mean, the perfect examples in Cincinnati was Zach Taylor. That's a guy that never had any resume to be a head football coach, and he's painfully proving it right now.
Oh, yeah. And then Joe Judge by the Giants, was he like a special teams coach or something? That was weird.
Yeah, but I think Joe Judge is a great football coach.
I think he is.
And he was a special teams coordinator. Mm-hmm. And the thing about special teams coordinator, there is a history of special teams coordinators being great head coaches. You had Marv Levy. The first one was probably Dick Vermeil was a special teams coach. George Allen was a special teams coach. Bill Cowher was. So I think you need to at least have been a coordinator of some kind at a high level to be able to be the head coach. But I also think it really helps if you hire 3 coordinators instead of trying to coordinate it yourself. The perfect example, Zach Taylor never was an offensive coordinator, just a quarterbacks coach at the University of Cincinnati. He failed miserably there too and got fired with Tommy Tuberville. But he's the head coach. He's also the offensive coordinator. And a lot of people don't realize how difficult it is, especially on a professional level, to call the offense, but still be able to manage the game also.
Right. And Mike, who's your NFL team?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the Bengals.
Okay. How long do you think the current coach, Zach Taylor, you said, how long do you think he'll last?
He shouldn't have been hired, but it doesn't matter. I gave up a long time ago. I just watched the games and hope they lose. I mean, this is the thing. I'm a Bengals fan.
Okay.
And 3 years ago, I cheered for him to lose every game to get rid of Marvin Lewis. And then last year, I cheered for him to lose every game to get Joe Burrow. And now this year, I'm back to cheering for him to lose every game to get rid of Zach Taylor.
There you go. Did you
So
agree? Do you agree it was time when Marvin Lewis left? I think it was time.
I can tell you what I said on my shows. It's time for Marvin to go. But I do a Bengals weekly show with Joe Kelly, who was the starting outside linebacker, Super Bowl 23 for the Bengals. And what I said on that show when they fired him is the same thing. And it resonates today, too. I told him, yeah, they should fire Marvin. He's overstayed his welcome. But don't be surprised if they hire somebody even worse.
Oh, yeah, and I hated to hear that on Joe Burrow. I hated him take that hit like that, and hopefully,
Yeah, because he's special.
He was.
And this is the thing. Even in Cincinnati, if he stays there, he's eventually going to win a Super Bowl somewhere. And it doesn't matter where it's at because he's that good.
Oh, yeah. I just hope that knee's okay. And then, and you do have AJ Green, former Georgia guy. So
you can have him back if you want.
I know. You think he's just a little aged?
Well, it's a bad organization. I mean, there was no reason to give him a $20 million franchise tag and give Bobby Hart, one of the worst right tackles in NFL history, a 3-year contract at $21 million when you could have taken that money and went out and gotten a free agent guard like Brandon Shreve for probably half of that money. So the Bengals are just a poorly run organization. They've got 8 scouts on staff. In the AFC North, the Ravens, Steelers, and Browns all have between 30 and 40 scouts.
Jeez.
And Joe always tells me that the Bengal ownership basically goes by what Mel Kiper says and what they see on January 1st when they watch the bowl games. So that's why you've got a mess.
Yeah, really good point. Lack of staff.
A lack of everything in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Common sense is a killer, too.
Hey, I like it, brutally honest. Yeah, I guess get back to some of the hot seat talk. And then we mentioned earlier, say you think Harbaugh's probably going to move on. So who would you think would be maybe a good name to go to Michigan?
I don't know because they always want a Michigan man.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's kind of bit them in the ass is they always want a Michigan man there. I mean, Bo Schembechler's not coming back.
Yeah.
But Kevin Sumlin, I never thought much of anyways. I think he's out. Pruitt, doesn't Tennessee fire their coach every year or something anyways now? It's like a tradition.
They're still paying Butch Jones, who's getting Nick Saban coffee at Alabama currently as a consultant.
Yeah, and you had all these fans that hated Phil Fulmer at one point. I bet they would all love Phil Fulmer back now.
Yeah, he's like the AD now, so that's interesting too. They started out 2-0, and I think they've lost 6 or 7 straight games. Double digits. Tom
Herman's the interesting one to me because I thought he would have a lot more success at Texas than what he did.
Yeah, $25 million buyout. Rumor is Urban Meyer turned it down this week. A name I've been hearing, I was going to run this past you, was I guess Matt Campbell for Ohio State might be a hot name. What do you think about him for Texas?
He's an assistant. Hard to know. I would think that's the kind of guy you would want there. So I wonder they're not trying to bring back Mac Brown.
Yeah. He's actually doing really good with UNC. Got him top 20. Recruiting's doing really well.
You cut out there. I didn't hear what you said.
I said Mac Brown's doing pretty well. He's got him top 20. UNC recruiting class is doing really well, so he's got him going. I just don't know how many more years he wants to do it. He's getting way up there.
Yeah, Jeff Brom is a guy that I think is actually a good football coach. I don't think he's going anywhere. Scott Frost is a guy that people in Nebraska wanted him so bad. He's in the Big Ten. The Big Ten's everybody sucks in the Big Ten this year. But I think Scott Frost is the guy they wanted. I think it would be too soon to let him go because let's face it, Nebraska's program has not been good in a while.
All right.
So you got to give him a shot to build it. Dino Babers, he was doing good until about 2 years ago. I would think the lack of effort that you see when they play a lot of times, not against Notre Dame, they played hard there. I think he's questionable, but I do think he's a decent coach. Les Miles is in Kansas. Les Miles knew he was going to get fired when he got the job.
This was really interesting. I heard they after that loss last week, Gus Malzahn feeling some heat, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know why he would feel heat. It's Auburn, not Alabama.
Yeah, and he's actually done compared to the rest of the SEC. He's done pretty well against Saban. I think he's beaten him
Yeah,
3
I,
times.
I mean, it's not like he's Jim Harbaugh getting beat all the time by his main rival, and their bad years are years where they go 8-3. I just think a lot of these places, you get a lot of alumni that expect more than what can be given there. I mean, Malzahn's a good coach. He does some questionable things. All these guys do because all coaches do. Nobody's perfect outside of course, Bill Belichick. But and then I guess I didn't know Mike Leach was on the hot seat.
Well, that just might be one of these. I think you can't fire him after 1 year. You got to let him, give him.
Well, this is his first year, right?
Yeah, it is. Kobe.
And the thing about it is, he's going to an SEC school, and he's trying to turn them into an air raid team, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So if you're doing that, I would imagine the roster he has there is not stacked with guys that are air raid football players.
Yeah.
So really, if you're going to bring a guy like Mike Leach in the SEC and really believe he can pull off the air raid, you got to be willing to give him 3 or 4 years to get the right kind of players there.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Yeah, and I guess Vanderbilt was the only one that's open. You mentioned earlier that was going to be a tough one. So I guess that's about the only one left in the SEC currently. But sure, it'll be a lot of moving parts coming up.
Yeah, there always is. There will be in the NFL. There will be in college football, especially this year, just because everything has been so messed up. You got to be more than a coach this year.
And then how do you think I know Big Ten didn't handle it well, but with COVID, it's a weird year. How do you think the college football conferences have handled it? Do you think they've done pretty well handling the games, or what's your thoughts?
I would say probably not. I mean, the one thing I want to know is how the NFL and all these professional leagues and college football can get all these tests rapidly done like this. But if you've got some nurses at a hospital, they can't test them sometimes because they don't have enough tests. I think it's sad the world we live in that money controls that.
Yeah.
And I would really like to know how Des Bryant didn't get to play last night.
That was interesting, yeah.
But everybody else got to. And they could say he had limited contact. I'm pretty sure he was in the locker room with him getting dressed.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like Ravens really been eat up with it. And then I don't know. I had a really good friend. He's a diehard Steelers fan, and he's just been angry rants about how Ravens have ruined Steelers season. That backing it up almost a week, and they're now going to have to play 3 games in 12 days, and they took that loss against Washington. He's just really fired up about it. He's blaming.
Well, the thing that's really killed the Steelers is just losing Devin Bush and Bud Dupree.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that really James Conner is just a guy as a running back, and they didn't have him. I think the Steelers are doomed just because they can't run the ball. And it seems to me like Big Ben, the farther the season goes, the less he's throwing the ball down the field too.
Yeah. They do have a good receiving core, but I kind of feel like they're slowly kind of losing momentum.
Well, I think and Schuster, but I don't really think you have a number 1 there. And the big thing is you don't have a Heath Miller there anymore.
Yeah. I guess Ebron guy's pretty decent. He had some drops, but he's okay. Eric Ebron.
He had a lot of drops, though.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it seemed like the game was lost because they couldn't catch the ball. It wasn't because they played 3 games in 12 days. It's because they didn't execute. I mean, there had to be at least 6 or 7 drop balls in that game.
Exactly. I'd probably have to go with the, easy pick of talking the Kansas City Chiefs maybe in the AFC. Who would you maybe lean towards in the NFC, maybe as a Super Bowl contender?
If Drew Brees is playing, New Orleans is the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, defense is salty.
They're the only team without a hole. I mean, they can throw the ball. They've got big-time receivers. They got a Hall of Fame quarterback. They've got Alvin Kamara, who's one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the NFL. Defensively, they can get after the quarterback. The secondary is solid. They are the only team in the NFL that is a complete football team. Kansas City is not a complete team. The thing I worry about Kansas City is I think they can be upset because last year, if you remember, the last half of their season, their defense was really good.
Yeah.
And they lost a lot of depth off the defensive line. They can be run on now. And when you've got teams like Tennessee, and I hate to say it, Cleveland, I mean, those are teams that can come in and just pound the ball at you for an entire game and maybe pull an upset. And we've already seen if the Raiders get in, the Raiders are definitely dangerous for the Chiefs because the Chiefs, for some reason, have trouble with the Raiders. I don't think Pittsburgh's a threat to them. I think Buffalo's a threat because I think Josh Allen is way underrated by most people. My only question is their defense has not been as good as it has been the last couple of years, and I don't know if the running game is good enough to cause a problem there. But I think Josh Allen could cause problems. I think Buffalo, Tennessee, and as stupid as it sounds and as stupid as I feel saying it, Cleveland are probably the three biggest threats to them. And if Baker Mayfield can play like he did in the first half against Tennessee, hell, who knows?
Yeah, you got a good running game. Seems like their defense is pretty kind of stingy.
Well, when you get Myles Garrett back, your defense is pretty good because you've got an edge rusher that can get after the quarterback. And you've got an edge rusher there that kind of limits what Patrick Mahomes can do running around in the pocket.
Yeah, I agree. The one that was looking really good, but they're trending down. And I guess I don't know what happened with the Seahawks with their offense. They were throwing moon bombs and lasers by Russell Wilson. They just kind of
Well, the
fell out.
Seahawks just defensively are not very good. They picked up Carlos Dunlap, who gave him a little bit of a pass rush, then he got hurt. And I think the biggest problem in Seattle is the same thing has been for the last 3 years, which was the offensive line. And they're a team that the last 3 or 4 years, everybody wondered why they didn't throw the ball more. And now it's the opposite. They're wondering why they're throwing it so much and not running the ball at all. So Pete Carroll is confusing sometimes as a coach. He normally wins games, but they're still a threat just because they've got Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I agree. Chris Carson, I know they've been banged up at running back. That DK Metcalf, to me, I don't want to put him in the same category. He reminds me of like a Megatron. I hate to say poor man's Megatron. He can run. He's just big and
I don't even know if it's a poor man's Megatron. When you consider that if you compare their rookie seasons, Metcalf's better, or second season. I mean, now Calvin Johnson turned out to be maybe the greatest wide receiver we've ever seen. I'm older, so I'm always going to lean towards Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
But I mean, Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, I mean, I don't think outside of Rice, and the reason Rice to me is ahead of them is the fact that Rice, what he did in playoffs and Super Bowls. Now, Fitzgerald did that in playoffs and Super Bowls also. He just didn't have as many opportunities.
he's still playing, which is crazy.
Yeah, and he can still play.
How about Randy Moss?
What about Randy Moss? I'll take T.O. You can have Randy Moss. I remember going to the Bengals-Raiders game like 7 years ago and watching the game, and Randy Moss, unless the pass was going to be to him and he was the one receiver, he just stood at the line of scrimmage the entire game. So Terrell Owens, people give a lot of crap to, but Terrell Owens played in Cincinnati, and Terrell Owens always worked his ass off.
Yeah, he was a worker.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is this, he was a pain in the ass sometimes, but I don't think he ever had to question how hard he tried. And the big one to me is, I'm not going to say who it was, but I have a friend who played on the Vikings in, 2000, when the Vikings got blown out like 41-0 by the Giants in the NFC Championship game. And, Randy Moss, same thing, stand line of scrimmage, half-ass run his routes. And he said the reason that Moss did that is he was pissed off because they only gave him like 2 free tickets to the game, and he had like 30 in his posse that wanted to go. So he was pissed that they were going to make him pay for the tickets himself.
Oh, wow. It's a weird reason. A little minuscule.
Not really if it's Randy Moss, though.
Oh, yeah. A little high maintenance, yeah.
Yeah, a little high maintenance.
Hey, you got Moss, as they say,
Yeah, you got Moss. And he was a great talent. He had a great year in New England. And New England lost. So,
yeah, it was a crazy year with Brady, but yeah. Look, we'll go over the games real quick. I guess not the best slate of games.
There never is right now in the time of COVID, is there?
Exactly. And you got to hold your breath or they won't get canceled.
Yeah.
I guess if I had to look at one, maybe North Carolina and Miami, I think I think they're talking about if North Carolina beats maybe Miami, they go to the Orange Bowl. Supposed to be really good for Mac Brown.
Yeah. Good quarterback, but I would lean towards Miami, but not by much. I'm not really impressed with either team. I think Miami is way overranked at 10. I told you I thought Georgia was at 9. I think Miami is even more overranked at 10. And I think because of the COVID, what I think we've seen is a lot of legacy rankings, even more than normal, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. I think just going on names,
Yeah. And I think the Wisconsin-Iowa could be a good game.
And so who's it looking like? You might have it. So who's it looking like? We'll probably play Ohio State.
It'll be Northwestern.
Yeah. And I just
And
feel like they're not another
Northwestern defensively is really good.
Yeah.
Their problem is Ohio State's going to have a hard time against a team that throws the ball. That's not Northwestern. So Ohio State they'll probably blow out Northwestern in the second half. We can only hope Northwestern beats them, though, just to throw this into mass chaos.
All right. Texas, Kansas, not much. This is a big rival game. I could see Florida dropping the hammer on them.
Yeah.
What do you think about what's going on at LSU? Smoke and mirrors there? A little smoke going?
I think he ought to be fired. I was never impressed with him as a coach anyways. I think he ran into the perfect storm of Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Edwards-Helaire. I mean, hell, he had an NFL. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, they probably should have just made Brady the head coach after they won the national championship. But there's stuff going on at LSU that should have been dealt with that wasn't.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big Ed Orgeron fan.
So I don't think it's ever happened that a coach has been fired the year after the national title. I think Gene Chizik had 2 years. Do you think?
Well, there's a first time for everything.
So if let's just say LSU, hey, we're gonna fire him and buy out. Would you you just mentioned his name? I heard Brady might be throw it at him.
I think Brady's in the NFL right now, right?
Yeah.
And I think Brady could be a perfect fit in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. So, but it's according to what he wants to do. I mean, if you have any common sense and you have a choice between a college team and a pro team, you take the college job, because usually LSU is probably going to pay you more than what an NFL team is going to pay you, especially if they want you badly. And if you go there and you're successful, you got a job for life. And look at Nick Saban. I mean, he's never going to come back to the NFL because he's treated like Jesus at Alabama.
Exactly. I guess I had a friend's brother that has, he's been D-line coach at like all the big ones, Florida, Texas, and Alabama, and he's with the Texans now. And I guess he always talks to him. I guess he said he prefers NFL because of that grind of recruiting.
Yeah.
By that kind of like NFL, like here's your team, here's your positions. Hey, this is all. Here's what they gave you, and you got to like grind and contact all those recruits, try to get 4 or 5 stars.
Yeah, I think it's according to what you would rather do. I think Nick Saban was more built to do that than do the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of guys like that. I mean, I don't think Dabo Swinney would be a good coach in the NFL because Dabo Swinney's a big bullshit artist. So, and so is Nick Saban. And this is the thing, 18-year-old kids that want a scholarship will fall for your bullshit. Grown men with families won't.
Money.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. They're bullshit artists. I mean, Dabo Swinney, when he said that if they started paying players, he would be so offended he wouldn't even coach anymore, proved to me what he was right then. I mean, the dude makes $10 million or more a year, and he's going to be mad that a kid's getting a stipend so he can buy a pizza on a Saturday night.
Yeah, I agree. How about this? So you're picking when the national title will be Alabama this year. So you're going with?
Unfortunately, yeah.
But so as I just talked to my mom, she's a big college football fan. She had a question today. So let's say Saban wins this one, he'll break the Bears record. He'll have 6 at Alabama and 1 with LSU 7. So he's almost 70 next year. How much time and what else? Money's not an issue.
I think him and Belichick are friends, and I think that the Bear died 2 months after he quit coaching.
Yeah, I think it kept him alive.
Yeah, they won that bowl game against, what was it, Illinois?
Yeah.
And then that was it. I mean, that was his life. And to me, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick seemed like guys where this is their life. And Nick Saban doesn't look as old as what he is. And
he beat COVID too.
Yeah. He beat it twice, didn't he?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. But then again, 99.9% of all people under 70 do. But still, we can't play football games if somebody gets sick. So that's another issue I have, but that's all right. Either play the games or don't.
Right.
Playing football is inherently more dangerous than COVID, by the way.
I can see that, yeah. Look at all the injuries in the NFL this year. Crazy.
Well, look at all the players that have, shot themselves in the heart so their brains could be checked. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, Junior Seau, guys like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I think Nick Saban, at least another 5 years. Why wouldn't you? Who's the greatest coach of all time in college football?
Nick Saban.
I take Bear.
Yeah, I mean, he's really, really close. I know I was, of course, way before my time, but I guess
Well, all I can tell you is this: Bear Bryant built Alabama football.
he did.
Nick Saban just continued what Bear Bryant and Gene Stallings and guys like that did. Plus, Bear Bryant won a lot of games at the University of Kentucky.
He did. Junction Boys was great.
Anybody that can win games at Kentucky is a hell of a football coach. Let's see Nick Saban go to Kentucky and win 11 games.
Hey, speaking of that, I think Spurrier won while he was at Duke before Florida, so that was impressive too, right? Spurrier, he's a good coach.
Spurrier is a good coach.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I mean, he was a damn good football coach.
As a Georgia fan, I hate to hear what you just said, 5 years, because, hey, 40 years and counting. So,
well, your biggest problem is not Nick Saban, it's Kirby Smart, I think. But that's just my opinion.
but
I think Kirby Smart made some decisions that gave away a couple national championships.
Yeah, and then Florida, not Florida, Alabama, 2012 game beat us right at the end. We ran out of, the clock ran out with the tip ball and the receiver caught it. Hate to say second and 26. They beat us in 2018. It's just we can't get over this Bama hump.
Yeah, well, nobody can get over the Bama hump except for Clemson.
So that's why I wouldn't mind if I'm retiring, guys, but 5 years, geez.
Yeah, but don't you want to beat him while he's there?
I do.
Instead of wait till after.
I would like to be him to be the first assistant to beat him. That'd be great.
There you go. As long as you beat him. And I do think Kyle Trask, I know you wanted to talk about the Heisman. To me, Kyle Trask should win the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, I'd say Kyle Trask. And then how about if Mac Jones, though, outperforms him in the SEC championship game and Mac Jones is having a great year?
I think Kyle Trask is the best quarterback out there right now. I think for NFL, hey, outside of Trevor Lawrence, no, I don't think he will be, but I think somebody's going to draft him in the second, third round, and you're going to get, he's not the same kind of player, but a Dak Prescott, Andy Dalton guy who's going to be a starting quarterback for you for 10 years. I don't think he's like Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence-esque or Andrew Luck or John Elway, but I think the kid's a really solid quarterback, and I think he's being sold short. And I really look for Florida to give Alabama some trouble in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, and I don't think the guy ever was a starter in high school, which is crazy.
Yeah, things like that happen. Michael Jordan didn't make his sophomore varsity basketball team. He turned out all right.
There you go. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Mike. Again, how do we follow you on all the different social media?
You can follow me on Twitter at Grueling Truth. We are on YouTube. We got demonetized because I don't know why, but everybody I know did too. We've got 67,000 followers, and we got demonetized. And then, of course, a few days after they demonetized us, we get a note saying YouTube now can monetize, put ads, and you won't get any of the money. So
that's no fun.
That's a killer. So we are on Rockfin also now, where they do not block anybody or anything. You can have whatever, which is really weird in this country anymore. You can follow us at Grueling Truth on Twitter, thegruelingtruth.com. Our podcast can be heard on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, over 300 different platforms we're on.
Wow.
And I had forgotten about you during the off season. You used to put your show on our network.
Yeah, I need to do that. Yeah, I'll admit, some of my friends are like, hey, I kind of like the whole COVID thing. And I was kind of just like, if I post stuff and there's no season, is it a waste? So
Well, I can tell you this. Do historical stuff. Get somebody that played on the 80 Georgia Bulldogs or something to come on.
There is something I always talk about, like if I did weekly. Some friends say, let's just talk about hot topics, bring up an old game, and you could always do that. So
hell, they get the capability now. You can actually watch the game and talk over it now.
Yeah.
You get a couple guys that played on the game, and I can tell you, just to plug my own real quick, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Periscope, Twitch, 11 o'clock a.m. Friday morning. NFL Hall of Famer Andre Reed will be the guest on our NFL Legends show, so you can hear that at 11 a.m. live.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Mike, and you got a lot of stuff going on, and we'll hope to have you again soon, and I'll try to post it again on the Grueling Truth.
All right. Sounds good. Go Dogs.
Thank you. Hey, thank you.
See ya.
All right, see you.
Bye.